Okay, now we're going to learn about this thing called a dangling modifier. This is a super common error both in your everyday writing and also on the SAT. The rule for this is, if your sentence starts with some extra information about a noun, then you have to put that noun right after the extra information. This only applies when that extra information is at the beginning, because as you've seen before in grammar, extra information, modifiers can go in lots of places lots of times. This is one of those instances where it's very restricted in its location. Let's take a look. So, this would be a correct sentence. Walking down the street, Fred noticed the fancy piano. Why? Because it starts with extra information about Fred, and then it puts Fred right after the comma. So, here's the extra information there, and then Fred is right next to it. It's also separated by a comma. Also correct, shining with radiant ebony polish, the fancy piano caught Fred's eye. Okay, now this one's correct because it starts with extra information about the piano, and then it puts the piano right after the comma. So the words the piano, the fancy piano, that's okay. Right, so shining with radiant ebony polish is an entire big clump modifier. For the piano, it has to go directly next to the piano. We have to write it that way. Now, how is this used wrong? This is what would be wrong. Walking down the street, the fancy piano caught Fred's eye. Now, that might sound silly to you, but trust me, people do this all the time. This starts with extra information about Fred, because obviously the fancy piano is not walking down the street. But then it puts the word piano right after the comma. Right? So the fancy piano is that thing right after the comma. This makes it sound like the fancy piano was walking down the street. Obviously, that is not true. Also wrong. Walking down the street, Fred's eye noticed the piano. Why is this wrong? Because Fred's is a possessive. Possessives are modifiers. They are adjectives. They tell you who does this eye belong to. Who is an adjective type of question, right? What type of eye? Fred's eye. Who does the eye belong to? That's an adjective question that's being answered there. So the eye is actually the subject of noticed. The eye noticed the piano. Whose eye? Fred's eye. And the eye, which is the subject here, was not walking down the street, right? So the noun being modified here is actually I, and the I itself was not walking down the street. Fred was walking down the street. This is one of the most common ways that this thing gets wrong. Alright, cool. Using this, we are going to analyze a few practice questions.